Hi there, it's Asia. I just want to tell you that I really enjoy helping you with IELTS. It makes me feel like we're all part of one great big family, the IELTS family. Hey, why don't we talk about family today? It's a topic that often comes up in IELTS speaking, and you may need some advanced vocabulary to talk about it. Yes? Let's get started. In part one of the speaking test, you may have lots of opportunities to mention your family members and family memories. Let's look at some useful vocabulary. Your extended family includes your grandparents, uncle, aunts, cousins, nieces, and nephews. If we just talk about you, your parents, and your brothers and sisters, we can say your immediate family. One great word that means brothers and sisters is siblings, and they can be younger or older than you. Notice that we use the adjective older, not older. We can say, for example, my elder brother is a doctor. We use older to make comparisons. He's 4 years older than me. Sometimes the questions are not directly related just to family. Questions about holidays, for example. What was the best holiday you've ever had? Can easily get you talking about your family. I remember one time I must have been 7 or 8 years old, and practically the whole extended family, my parents, my three eldest siblings, my uncle and aunt, my cousins, and my grandparents, rented a house near the beach. So that looks like a large family. Compare that to, well, I was an only child and my parents got divorced when I was very small. My mom remarried, so I have a stepfather and a half sister. An only child is a child with no siblings. Please know the article an. I'm an only child. They say only children are spoiled or rude and badly behaved because they get all the attention. As an only child myself, I don't think that's true. And yes, sometimes marriages do not last and a couple can separate or live apart or divorced, which means to legally separate. But people can remarry, get married to another person, and the child or children from the first marriage then have a stepfather or stepmother. In this example, the mother had a baby with her second husband, a half sister or half brother. If the stepfather or stepmother has children from another marriage, they become stepsisters or stepbrothers. Complicated? Sorry. Maybe it's a good idea to draw your family tree. And if you're married, don't forget to include your husband's or wife's family. Those relationships are not always the best, or so they say. But what do we call people from those families? Actually, my in laws are really great, especially my mother in law, who must be the best babysitter in the world. And then there is my brother in law, who's one of my oldest friends. A happy family. So, your in laws simply means your husband or wife's immediate family members. And we put the stress on the first vowel, in laws. We can also talk about interesting characteristics we share with family members. One interesting part one question about photos is, do you have a favorite family photo? This could be a good opportunity to mention similarities and differences between family members. Look at these verbs: to look like, to take after. Is there someone in your family you resemble physically? We say we look just or exactly like, or even a bit like someone else. I look exactly like my grandma. If you look very different, you could say, I don't look at all like my sister. We use to take after someone to mean that our personality is similar or that we're interested in the same things. So, to talk about the photo. Yes, there is one with just me and my grandparents the day I graduated. Everyone says I look just like my dad, the same nose and eyes, but I think I take after my mother. She's very stubborn, just like me. I'm sure you know someone who has the same profession as another older family member. Look at this great idiomatic expression to describe that. To follow in someone's footsteps. My younger sister followed in her father's footsteps. She was the only one of us who wanted to be an engineer, just like him. The rest of us are teachers and journalists. To follow in someone's footsteps means to do the same as someone has done before. Of course, let's not pretend that it's easy being a family member. I mean, how many TV series are all about family rivalries, especially sibling rivalry? It seems that just because you're brother and sister, you don't have to like each other. Sibling rivalry means competition and arguments among brothers and sisters. Someone lucky could say, there was barely any sibling rivalry in our family. However, often that's not the case. And there are lots of ways to talk about these rivalries. Well, I don't get on at all with my brother. We used to be close when we were small, but over the last few years we've grown apart, and at any family get-together we just end up arguing. It's sad, really. So, when we talk about relationships, we can say either it's good, we get on, or we get on well with each other, or bad, we don't get on, or we get on badly. We can be close to someone, that is, to have a very positive and strong connection. When a relationship changes, it can become cool or distant. People see less of each other, take different paths in life. They grow apart. Another useful verb is to drift apart, which expresses the idea of a slow breakdown in relationship. We began to see less and less of each other. We just drifted apart. That would make any special family event, even a time when family members meet to celebrate a birthday, for example, at a family get-together, a little difficult. They say that sometimes these family conflicts can affect the whole sections of one family or even divide a family in two. But remember that families already have two sides. One comes from your father and the other from your mother. The problem is that on my father's side of the family, they are all very creative and artistic, and they just don't see eye to eye with anyone on my mother's side who are all very practical and don't see any point of painting or poetry. Yes, families have sides. And notice the preposition on my mother's side of the family. And if you don't share the same opinions, the expression not to see eye to eye with is a perfect way to show it. We can also use it positively. So if you share the same feelings and opinions as someone else, you can say, we see eye to eye. We've been talking about part 1 questions so far. Do you know that each IELTS speaking test begins with just one of 5 topics: family, home, hometown, work, or studies? You can download my PDF guide with questions and some vocabulary for each if you follow the link in the video description. Can you talk about your family in parts 2 and 3 of IELTS speaking? Oh yes, there are plenty of opportunities. For example, you may be asked about family differences or differences between generations. Do older people enjoy the same types of films? Do older people use the internet and social media? A generation gap is a difference between people of different ages in opinions and style. For example, I come from a very traditional culture where we are taught to treat the elderly with respect. It's an important part of our upbringing. After all, we can learn so much from them. Of course, we should be polite and respectful to everyone. We should treat everyone with respect. Though here we're talking about older people, the elderly. If it's part of the way you've been educated or taught from early childhood, it's our upbringing, to use the noun. And if you want the verb, you can say it's part of the way we are brought up. Always notice the passive form. I was brought up by my grandparents. And please note that you learn from someone. We can learn a lot from the elderly. Now that I've mentioned grandparents, that reminds me that in part 3 of the speaking test, it's quite possible that the examiner will want to discuss with you aspects such as the roles and responsibilities family members have in different cultures. Let's take some likely IELTS questions. The first is, how many generations live together in your country? It's very common to find 3 or even 4 generations living under the same roof. In our culture, we don't see taking care of elderly relatives as a burden. We owe them so much for making us what we are today. What about you? Do several generations live together in the same house, under the same roof? Your relatives are your family members who can be young or, at the opposite extreme, elderly. But taking care of them is not a heavy, unpleasant task like a burden. Why? Because we have to repay them for everything they did for us. We owe them that. A kind of moral debt, not a financial one. Here is another part 3 question. Should it be the sole responsibility of the family to take care of the elderly? What about the government? I know that in many places, the elderly or senior citizens often end up in private or public residential homes. But if it is at all possible, the family members should be the primary caregivers for their loved ones. It's their duty to do so. Sometimes we think that the words like elderly or old are negative, so we can say instead seniors or senior citizens. Now, if someone cannot take care of himself or herself, another person, a caregiver, can help do it, and perhaps that's the right thing to do, your duty, for a person you love, your loved one, or loved ones in the plural form. Oh, now we're coming to the most important part, married couples. Take a look at this question. Let's talk now about husbands and wives. Should they have different roles within the family? On the whole, the traditional gender-based roles where the man is the breadwinner and the woman has all the household duties are fast becoming a thing of the past. There are more and more families where both of them equally share responsibilities, especially when there are children involved. Interesting. There is a lot of talk these days about gender. Can we really say, for example, that a man must go out and work and bring money into the house, that is, be the breadwinner, and the woman must stay at home cleaning and cooking, doing the household duties? If you think that's completely out of date, you can say that's a thing of the past. And if we divide responsibilities, we share them equally. That takes us to a question about children. What responsibilities do parents have towards their children? You mean apart from the basics like feeding and clothing them? Well, it's important that they instill the right kind of values in their offspring by teaching them how to be caring, responsible individuals. If you give a baby or a child food, you feed them, and when you dress them, you clothe them. Feeding and clothing are nouns that describe that precisely. Again, we mention values, positive ones, the right kind. And we have to constantly establish in a child's mind these values through our own behavior and teaching. We have to instill them in our offspring. Please note that the noun offspring doesn't just mean children. You can only use it to talk about someone's children, my offspring, his offspring. I think now we all agree that family plays a very important role in all our lives. But just how important? What about friends? We all know that especially when we're young, our friends mean everything to us. But can that cause a conflict in the family? Look at this question. Which are more important to you, family or friends? That's a difficult one. They say that you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. And yes, there is some truth in that. But family is where we belong, and there are bonds that cannot be easily broken no matter what happens. Maybe you've heard that expression, you can't choose your family before. And we often use it in the sense of admitting that family connections or bonds are very strong and cannot be easily broken in spite of possible differences, because there is this sense of belonging to your family. But especially when you're young, when we are teenagers, sometimes there are some issues. For one reason or another, not all your friends will be accepted by your parents, and you get some signs of disapproval, often because they think your friends may have some bad habits or they're afraid they will influence you negatively, that they have a bad influence on you. You can also talk about a good influence too. But don't forget, your parents love you and only want the best for you. Or, as we can also say, they have your best interests at heart. Take a look at this part 3 IELTS question. What conflicts can arise between a person's family and a person's friends? I think there can be issues when you start inviting your friends home and maybe your parents don't approve of them for one reason or another. They may think they have a bad influence on you. I know they only have your best interests at heart, but when you are at that age, it's sometimes not easy to see that. We could go on, but I think that's more than enough for one day. You can download my PDF guide with IELTS speaking questions and vocabulary right here. And now it's time for us to spend some quality time with family and friends. Thank you so much for watching me. Good luck with your preparation and your exam. Bye!